Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly lecture series. I'm Becky, and today I'm going to be talking with Aliénor Salmon from Bailando Journey about embarking on a journey to happiness in 7 steps. Welcome to Digital Nomad World, Aliénor.
Thank you so much for having me, Becky. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm really excited to hear about your story about finding happiness and also writing that lovely book behind you. So, first, I'd like to ask about your background and how you got started on this happiness journey yourself.
Of course, and actually the way that I embarked on my happiness journey also led to my nomad journey because they're very much intertwined. So I was working as a happiness researcher at the UN in a job that many would dream to have, living a life that many would dream to live, and yet I was completely unhappy. It seemed to me so strange that I was writing about happiness, I was studying happiness, I was giving speeches on happiness, and yet I was not happy. I'd gone through the loss of 3 very important people in my life. Um, and the sadness, the grief, the heartbreak led me to basically being probably the unhappiest I had ever been. Now, the interesting thing with sadness is it actually can help us a lot. And sadness often teaches us how to find our greatest happiness. In the moments, in the depths of my sadness, I asked a friend a question. I said to her, "What would you do if you could do anything without the limit of time or money?" And it's interesting because we always place these limits in front of our dreams. We always think, no, I won't even imagine this. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I have kids. I have responsibilities. But my question really came from a place of almost desperation. Like, is there anything that can remove this pain? Like, what, I was just looking for her inspiration as well. And she said, yes, I know what I would do. I would go and swim with whales in Papua New Guinea. And I thought,
Wow.
oh, okay, that's really, I had never thought of that. I didn't expect her to return the question to me. And I had no immediate answer. And there I was, a happiness expert at the UN, incapable of replying to the question, essentially, what would make you happy? And so I closed my eyes and I looked really deep inside myself. And I will never forget this moment that I just thought, what does my heart really want? So I started asking myself, where would I be? Who would I be with? What would it look like? And I imagined myself in a Spanish speaking environment because I learned Spanish as a teenager and it's a language that I always felt was very expressive and joyful. I saw myself out of the streets. I saw myself liberated from my desk. And then I thought, I heard music and movement. And next thing I know in my head, I'm on the rooftops of Havana, dancing and laughing. And I turn back to my friend and I say, I would quit my job to dance. And she says, okay, where would you go? What dance? And I thought, well, I have this image of Cuba, but maybe I would just do the traditional dance thing, like trip idea, and take a few months to Buenos Aires, learn tango. But I've been taking some bachata classes, so maybe I'll go to the Dominican Republic, where it's actually from. Oh, but if I'm going to do that, then I really have to experience Rio Carnival and learn samba. Okay, now that I have this itinerary, I have to learn salsa, but where am I going to learn it? In New York, in Cuba, in Puerto Rico, in Colombia? All of them. Within the space of minutes, an idea that had never crossed my mind suddenly was there. And my friend turns to me and says, you have to do this. And I said, oh, really? I thought, wait, actually, how could I really make that happen? And it wasn't an overnight thing. It's not like I just set off right away. I did have to save, but I found a way to make it happen. And off I went. I left everything behind. I sold all my things. I was at the peak of my career, left everything, and embarked on a journey through 8 different countries, learning 18 dances in just 10 months. And it completely changed my life. It completely changed my outlook on happiness. And before we get into the 7 steps, I have to say this. One thing is studying happiness and talking about it. That's talking the talk. Another thing is walking the talk, but I danced it. And by dancing it, I embodied it. I was living and breathing it through my body. And when I look back, this is what this journey was really about. It was, what does it mean to actually live these concepts of happiness in our daily life?
Wow, what a journey that you had. And I can only, I wish I had spent that time with you and we could all just be watching it happen. But I know that you wrote a book about it. So how was that process as well after you finished those 10 months?
Yeah, I mean, that's in a way, I would say that with the book. So my book is called Finding Rhythm: An International Dance Journey. It was published in March 2021, which was, let's say, if my journey finished in June, let's say 4 years, less than 4 years after the journey ended. What was really special was, it was one thing to live the journey, and I made detailed notes throughout the whole journey, using the notes app on my iPhone, taking videos, taking photos. I was so impressed with how much I actually remembered to minute detail of conversations. I also did a lot of interviews. There was the process of writing the book, and they say the easy part is to write it, the hard part is to edit it. So once I got a literary agent and a book deal, then it was really, the pressure was on to like, okay, we're going to dig in and rewrite this and structure it, which was actually in March 2020. So I spent the whole lockdown reliving my dream. I feel so grateful for that, because one, I needed to be locked up and focusing on my book. But second, I spent lockdown reliving everything. Every time that I rewrote it, I relived those memories, and putting them into words was just so special, because I learned new things and had new realizations about how transformative this journey was that I couldn't have figured out at the time. I needed that time, that reflection, to understand how significant it was to my life, for my happiness, but also how I could bring that to other people.
Wow. So you went on this journey, if I do the math right, about 2017. And then when you finished, is that what led to your nomad life? You had quit your job, obviously, and had finished that 10-month journey. And what happened at that point?
So I actually left my job in Bangkok, Thailand at the UN in August 2016. And I finished my journey in June 2017. When I had planned to take a sabbatical, and I always thought I would go back to the career that I had before, but things don't work out that way. It turned out that there were a lot of things that I could do without needing to be in an office, which was very unconventional for my former employers, because they had consultants that were usually retired or that did editing. So I started off with editing of reports, but as a researcher, I would usually write them. But then I told them, look, I can do research from a distance as well. I can write. And they were open to the idea, because I told them I'm still here. I don't need to be in the office. And with this kind of heavy research and writing work, you don't need to be in meetings. You just need to submit things by a certain date, which means that time zones and all that isn't really an issue. And I just started getting projects. And I thought, okay, I'll just do this until it stops working. And it kept working. so then I realized, hold on, I can live a lifestyle revolved around dance and revolved around the countries where I want to learn these dances, or where I want to have life experiences that are going to enrich me and ultimately bring happiness and fulfillment to my life. And so for me, it's very important to learn dances in their country of origin, which is why I like to go to Latin America, to really immerse myself in the culture, because it's not just about going to a dance studio and learning some steps. For me, if I go and dance bachata in Dominican Republic, I want to be not under the coconut tree, because that's dangerous, but near the coconut trees. I want to be getting like the brown paper bag beer from the colmado, which are like the corner shops they have there, like and doing things the way that locals would, because that's how you learn their perspective on life and on happiness as well. So in a way, it led me to completely redesign my lifestyle based on my priorities. And now I would call myself a retired nomad, in that I have a full-time base, but I can go at any time. And now I'm calling it my winter moon, because people have like honeymoons, baby moons. I'm like, this is my winter moon. Even though in Lisbon we're so lucky, winter isn't so harsh. But why not spend my winter moon dancing somewhere in the world.
Wow. Where are you going this winter? Do you already have plans?
So it's really exciting because I know how much time I have. I just haven't decided where I'm going. So I'm toying with the idea of, do I go to the Dominican Republic? Because I have some dreams. And if you read my book, Finding Rhythm, Dominican Republic's the one country where I didn't feel I got to fully experience bachata the way that I wanted, or some of the dance experience I wanted, like dancing in a car wash. That is a real thing. People take their cars to be washed, and while they wait, they dance. And I really wanted to go and dance in a car wash and never got to do it. So that's still on my list. And also the way they dance bachata in Dominican Republic is very different to in Europe. It's very playful, very staccato kind of. And so I'm thinking of that, but I'm also, and this is really the spoiled nomad in me. I'm thinking, how many jacaranda seasons can I get myself in 1 year? Because already in Lisbon we get 2. I had one in Mexico in March. And if I go to Buenos Aires in November, I can get another one. And I absolutely love jacarandas because the blossoms just, and for me, this is an approach to happiness as well, is seasons, trees, flowers, like everything that surrounds us. And as we travel, we find a lot of joy in those local things. So
I totally understand. I got to see many cherry blossom seasons when I lived in Japan, and that will always be special to me. And I always tell people it will be the first tattoo I get one day will be cherry blossoms. I love the beauty of the jacaranda and other flowers, as you mentioned, and how they're so beautiful, but for a short time. So I think it reminds us also to enjoy the shortness of that beauty and really be in the moment with these trees and flowers.
absolutely. And actually, the science of happiness shows us that if we want to maximize our happiness, we need a time limit on something. And I was also lucky enough to experience the cherry blossoms in Japan in April 2014. And it's just incredibly magical. It seems so simple, but it's these small things really contribute a lot to our happiness. And you know that they're not going to be around for that long. Um, so it's a moment when you're present, where you really pay attention to these small wonders that are around you.
I love it. I love this. And I really am interested to get these 7 steps now that we talked about at the beginning of our talk. So, how can people embrace their own journey to happiness in 7 steps?
So this is the framework that I've created that I call the 7 steps to happiness, or very often I present this as a workshop or as a talk called Finding the Key to Happiness. I also have a free workbook on my website, and I have a course that is all structured around these 7 steps. It is always going to be these 7 steps for me. It's the exact path that I went through in embarking on my own happiness journey, but I also go through all of them as a regular exercise for myself, because every year, for instance, I'll find new things. So before we get into the second steps, the number one priority is people need to understand what happiness actually is. So when we define happiness, the first thing is, of course, it's subjective. What makes one person happy will not make another person happy. But if we go deep into philosophical concepts, happiness can be analyzed from a philosophical perspective, from psychology, from behavioral economics. For me, as a social scientist, I look at it from a social science perspective, but I love to incorporate the philosophy and the psychology and the behavioral economics into it. Now, it's as simple as this. We can go back to good old Aristotle in the ancient Greeks, and they tell us happiness is fulfilling your full potential and living a fulfilling life, basically. It's that simple. It's not about jumping for joy saying, I feel so happy today every single day, because that's not what happiness is. As I said earlier, sadness is a huge part of our happiness. But actually, if I were to summarize based on the ancient Greeks and all the thinkers from the medieval times to the Enlightenment, the 20th century until today, happiness basically is about fulfilling our potential, living a life that has a meaning and purpose, and simply being fulfilled. So what does that mean? It means it's basically, if you're familiar with the Maslow's pyramid, it's very top of the pyramid stuff. It's feeling that you are, in the way that you are living, you are able to be you and to contribute in a way that is you and that is aligned with your higher purpose. So And finding meaning can be as simple as looking at the cherry blossoms or looking at the jacaranda trees. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I need to be a brain surgeon and save lives every single day. There is meaning in absolutely everything. So I would really urge people to think happiness is not about jumping for joy. It's actually about being fulfilled, fulfilling your potential, finding meaning and finding purpose. Now, how do we get to that? And that's when we get to the 7 steps. So the first step is redefine success. For a lot of us that are millennials, we really grew up in a society that told us what success looked like. And a lot of us digital nomads have been rebelling against that. So the traditional notions of success are you go to university, you get a degree, you get a good job, you get promoted, you get a good salary, you get married, get a mortgage, house, babies, whatever. But generally what I see is this huge attachment to status, salary, and job title as this is what you are worth. People will want to know, what did you study? What do you do in life? How much do you earn? Oh, they make loads of money, or they're doing great. To be very honest, I was lucky at a very early age, 18, 19, to somehow randomly, this may be a future book, end up on a yacht with millionaires. I can tell you that they are some of the unhappiest people I have ever met. So money does not bring happiness. The science really shows us that after 60K a year, it doesn't really increase much further. So the idea that, and then you have status, which is associated with power. But power really comes from this need to control others, or this desire to control, which is really not a meaningful experience, except if you want to influence as a leader to bring goodness. So I really think this need to redefine success is really linked in what is success to you. And what I tell people to do is to imagine their own death. And I know that this is really brutal, but imagine what is going to be on your tombstone. What are people are going to say at your funeral? They are not going to say they made this much money, they got promoted X amount of times. Even for nomads and entrepreneurs, they're not going to say they had a 6-figure business, a 7-figure business. No, you're going to want people to say, she was so kind and generous with others. She danced every day. These are the things that you actually want people to know. So for me, a successful life is how many jacaranda blossoms am I going to get this year? How many dances am I going to get this year? How deeply can I love the people around me? You know, it's just a completely different way of seeing success. So redefining success is really imagining that you're at the end of your life and looking back, but it's also going back to who you were as a child and remembering what made you excited then. So I also ask people to look back, when you were 4 years old, what made you really excited? And how could you do a version of that now for the 4-year-old version of you? So I think the beginning and the end of the life and revisiting different versions of ourselves and what actually meant something to us would be the first step. The second step is to identify our values and our strengths. So in positive psychology, which is the science of happiness, there are 24 character strengths. You can take a test for free. It's called the VIA survey. I'm happy to share a link. And in this free survey, it basically gives you a ranking of your 24 strengths. Now, what happens there is once you know what your values and your strengths are, you understand what you're good at, and you understand what's important to you. And that's the first step to going towards purpose and meaning. When you find your purpose, for instance, if we use the concept of ikigai, which is basically your purpose, you need to know what you're good at, what's needed, and what you can get paid for and all that. But you need to know your strengths. When you know your values, you make decisions, you choose your friendships more wisely. If, for me, for example, my number one value is kindness. I've taken the test in 2014, and 6 years later, I took it this year. Kindness is still number one. I can't be surrounded by people who aren't kind. Some people are fine with that, but for me, it's just a non-negotiable. So my decision-making process is much faster. I call it like the decision-making compass because it's a moral compass ultimately. Step 3 is to think beyond limits. The exact story I told you at the beginning when I asked my friend, what would you do without any limits? It's a really interesting exercise because when I really force people to answer this question, they come up with something really, really interesting. And I'd really like to urge listeners, to just, what helps is to really tell yourself, okay, only for 1 minute I can remove everything. The limit of, like, I have unlimited time, I have unlimited money in my bank account, I have no responsibilities, nothing can stop me. What would I actually do? Because honestly, I had no idea it would be a year dancing around the world. It had never crossed my mind. And then once you see what you come up with, then you can think, how can I make it possible within these circumstances? And again, you would be surprised how much it is possible. Step number 4 is overcoming fears. A lot of the things that we want to do, we don't do because we're afraid, either because we're afraid based on our own limiting beliefs, or we're afraid of judgment from others. I think there are, using small steps to confront our fears on a daily basis is a really good way to work to overcome our fears, because this is always blocking us. Step number 6, making daily choices. I think it's really interesting because every single moment in life is a choice. Whether you have that extra sip of water, whether you call that friend, whether you go for a walk, it doesn't mean that, you know, even I don't make the right choices, but I'm aware of it. I'm like, this morning I should have done this, or maybe next time I can improve. Everything is a choice, from the smallest to the biggest decisions. And those tiny choices that we make, which again are very much linked to our values and our strengths, will, once we start making them in an aligned way, our life is going to start to really flourish into this happiness. And the final step is design your happiest life. So here it's almost like taking a project management perspective. What does it actually look like to design a lifestyle? You need to think about your work situation, how you manage your time, and how you manage your money. Again, our resources, time, money, energy. And so in my case, when I embarked on my dance journey, I found that before saying, no, this is impossible, I was like, let's make a spreadsheet. Like, let's just, or even if it's on a piece of paper, let's see what would it actually cost? Or if you tell yourself, oh, I'm never going to be able to afford that trip to, I don't know, maybe a dream destination that's just out of budget. Look into it. Like, just see, what does it actually cost? How many, if I save this much over this many months, what would be possible for me? Because the reward that you get at the end is just absolutely spectacular. And it's really important from a happiness science perspective to have things to look forward to. And especially as nomads, we are a bit spoiled in the sense that we get to enjoy a lot of wonderful places. But sometimes we're so spontaneous and so fast, at least in my experience, that looking forward to things is something that we need to remember to have as a long-term perspective. And then having a plan towards, you know, what is your planning your time, planning your day, planning your month, and planning a big dream that you have. It could be writing a book, it could be a trip, it could be learning an instrument. It could look in so many different ways, but actually designing it into your life, saying every week I'm going to practice the flute 3 hours, and I want to learn this language within 6 months, or I want to write a book within 1 year. And I like to look at it more from an intention-based perspective than a goal perspective. Of course, you do need to have some goals in there, but it's not about crushing goals for the sake of it. It's about enjoying the journey, because happiness is a journey. So those are my 7 steps to happiness.
Thank you so much for sharing them. And can you go over them one more time from the top, just saying the name of the step?
Of course. Step 1, redefine success. Step 2, identify your values and strengths. Step 3, think beyond limits. Step 4, overcome fears. Step 5, oh, I completely missed step 5. Oh my goodness.
This was one thing. This was what I didn't want to stop you, but it was one thing I was like, wait, did we do 5? So let's talk about 5 now.
We're going to go to 5. Be in your body. In a world where we're constantly in our minds, we've completely disconnected ourselves from our bodies. And it doesn't mean that you have to be doing extreme sports or dancing every day like I do, even though I will always say that for me, dance is the most complete embodiment tool that exists, and the science proves it. It has huge capacity, especially partner dancing, to reduce the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's, which, if we're already seeing this generation suffering, I don't know what it will be like for our generation, but I really urge people, please dance. This will change your life and improve older life as well. But generally, just being in your body is a way of being in the present. our minds are so overactive, we're overloaded with information. And also, as nomads, constant logistics of traveling, of the next Airbnb, the next flight, and working things out, always in problem solving mode. When you're in your body, you are you. It's the embodiment, it's the how. And remembering that you are in this physical body is really important. And there's many ways you can go about it. It could be as simple as going for a run or a walk, or starting to be more sensitive to things like feeling the breeze on your skin. So I really like, as part of my happiness design and nomadic lifestyle, I really like working in outdoor spaces. It increases my happiness so much because I need to feel, whenever I feel the breeze on my skin, I know that I'm alive and that it's not just my head and my laptop. There's something else that's here as well. It could be really as simple as that. It could be swimming, it could be dancing, it could be getting a massage, anything that reminds you where your home is, because your home really is your body.
We never know how long we're going to have those bodies in the state that we have them, right? So let's like enjoy them now and be present with them, like you said.
Absolutely. So that was step 5, be in your body. Step 6, make daily choices. And step 7, design your happiest life.
Thank you so much for sharing those with us. And I really hope the listeners put all of those into practice. And I'm going to take your advice as well. Do you feel like a completely different person now that you have gone through these steps yourself and after your journey of dance? How do you feel now compared to before when you were working at the UN?
That's a really good question. I don't think that I'm a different person. I'm just a more evolved version of myself. The biggest difference that I see is that I don't pressure myself into doing and achieving and performing and producing in the way that I used to. Now I see more myself as feeling and being and giving. I think that this is something that has become more of a priority to me. And even as an entrepreneur, I have so many ideas, but I postpone them a really long time. Like I just started an embodiment method for women. I really hope it will be out for men very soon. I'm working on a male version and a mixed sex version, but basically I've taken mindfulness and Latin rhythms and fused them. And I teach this once a month in Lisbon, and I also teach it online. That's an embodiment method that is all about being and feeling. And I wanted to do it 3 years ago, but I only launched it this year. I had to re-go through all these steps. Every single time I have to go through all these steps. And every single year I go through them again, especially at the beginning of the year. Happiness is a constant journey. It's a lifelong journey. It's not like you're fixed once that you do it, but having this framework really helps you to check in with yourself of, okay, hold on a minute. Am I defining success correctly? Am I choosing a project based on my strengths? Am I making decisions aligned with my values? Am I limiting myself in my thoughts and in my dreams? Am I not doing this because I'm afraid? And yes, I was afraid to launch Mindful Latin Flow because of my limiting beliefs. And because it's not like yoga with centuries of evidence. I had no evidence that this works to help people be connected to their bodies. But now with every session, I'm about to teach the 6th edition. Every session I get feedback from people on how they felt, and I am blown away. But yeah, I postponed that because of fear. Being in my body, now I'm like, okay, whenever I feel distressed, I need to remind myself that I am here. What can I do to remind myself that I'm in my body? I go for a walk, I get a massage. And it really, as a kind of SOS situation, helps me a lot. Making daily choices, I have a daily journal practice. And when I I reflect on what was great and not so great about the previous day. In the not so great, I usually get the answer to what daily choices were not the right ones. And I identify patterns and I seek to improve them. And in designing my happiest life, every month I set a theme. And with that theme, I focus on improving myself as a human being and on giving the best that I can, and also following the dreams that I have. So that's the way that I would encourage anyone to just keep revisiting this framework. And I have a free workbook with questions and that are really, really good for reflection that listeners can get for free.
And that was my last question I wanted to ask is if people want to get this information and follow your journey, where can they go?
So I am most active on Instagram at Bailando Journey. So Bailando Journey. Bailando means dancing in Spanish because it was my happiness journey is my dancing journey. And on my website, bailandojourney.com, there you will find my free happiness workbook. You'll find Redefine Your Happiness, which is a course that takes you through all of these steps with special worksheets and videos and guidance. And the very exciting news, I am just about to launch my very own happiness school. And so this
Wow.
happiness school will consist of a monthly theme where we'll be working on this together. And every month we'll be looking at one of the character strengths from the science of happiness. I really want the first one to be hope, because we live in a world that desperately needs hope right now with the war, with climate change, with the amount of mental health issues that we're facing. I really want to dig into the philosophy and science of hope. There will be monthly worksheets, journal prompts, exercises, and I want to get people out to embody this, not just listen to me talking, but actually go and live it. And actually right now I'm taking on founding members to become happiness ambassadors, because I believe that a happier world is a more peaceful one. And on my own, my impact is limited. So as much as people want to help me join the happiness revolution, we need more happiness in the world.
Wow. Aliénor, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I really think this framework that people can revisit daily if they want to is really going to help them have more happiness in their lives.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day.